Now, taking a look back at the forum with us, we have Professor Min Jeong-hun from the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Thank you for making the journey to come in today.
My pleasure.
Now, last year, it was seemed to be high atmosphere at the ASEAN Regional Forum, with North Korea setting off nuclear missiles and nuclear bombs every other week, it seemed. But this year, it seemed more relatively calm. And that was perhaps reflected in the chairman's statement. The chairman's joint statement at the end called on the regime to commit the complete denuclearization of North Korea as promised, but it stopped short of calling for CVID. Now, why do you think they deliberately stopped short of calling for that CVID?
Well, as you mentioned, unlike the last year when member nations expressed their grave concerns about North Korea's provocations, they had a good atmosphere with North Korea this year. It reflects the improved security situations on the Korean Peninsula based on the successful inter-Korean summits and the North Korea-US summit. And according to the chair's statement, the foreign ministers attended the ARF this year urged North Korea to fulfill its commitment to complete denuclearization and its pledge to refrain from further the nuclear and missile tests. As you mentioned, some people expected that the chair's statement could include the phrase CVID, complete, verifiable, and irreversible dismantlement, but it didn't. Instead, it included, as you mentioned, the complete denuclearization, as in the Panmunjom Declaration. But I want to say that the two terms, CVID and complete denuclearization, should be interchangeable because basically both terms require North Korea to dismantle all nuclear capabilities it has. So it does not mean that complete denuclearization is lowering pressure on North Korea compared to the CVID. So I think that we are moving forward in the right direction with appropriate terms that the all participants could be satisfied with.
Moving forward, but perhaps not as fast as some had anticipated, there was much talk about a possible North Korea and South Korea sitting down together, North Korea and the US sitting down together, and all three doing a trilateral meetup as well. But that didn't really happen. Why do you think the North Korea decided not to go ahead with these talks?
Well, it was known that the Ri Yong-ho, the foreign minister of North Korea, turned down South Korea's request to have a bilateral meeting between the two Koreas by saying that it was not the right time for the talks. And as you know, North Korea did not have a bilateral meeting with the United States either. So it is like North Korea was expressing its complaints about the situation that the United States is not offering the declaration to end the Korean War, and is also pushing South Korea to take a more active role to change the U.S. attitudes about that. But the U.S. and the North Korea stick to the very different opinions about the denuclearization process and the declaration to end the Korean War. So it is like which comes first, or which party moves first situation. But if we think about the domestic situations that U.S. and North Korea have, U.S. got the tougher situations than the North Korea. As you know, even after the successful North Korea and U.S. summit, there still exists the pessimistic view in the United States that North Korea is not sincere in terms of denuclearizing itself. So if Trump administration agrees with the declaration to end the Korean War at this stage, then it is expected that it would face a serious criticism in the United States that it gave another credit to North Korea without getting anything about the denuclearization. So if North Korea has a will to denuclearize itself, it's necessary for North Korea to step forward by providing U.S. with a kind of the declaration list showing all of its nuclear capabilities and the facilities. then U.S. could have a political room and ground to persuade its domestic audience, and would be able to move toward providing North Korea with their declaration to end the Korean War. So North Korea, I think, should move first.
So in your opinion, Professor, do you think is there any concerns about the fact that they didn't meet, that these top men, these top diplomats, they were all in the same room, but it's such an opportunity for them to meet? Is it worrying, the fact that there was no progress made on that front, do you think?
No, I don't think so, because although they didn't have a formal meeting between the two countries, they exchanged their opinions in terms of their formal guest speaking and other things. And recently, the top leaders of the two countries, the President Trump and the Chairman Kim, exchanged another letters, and they showed how they would make a progress in terms of the denuclearization process and the establishing a peace regime on the Korean Peninsula in the letters. So they are just showing the strategies in terms of the negotiation process. So, and as I mentioned, the Ri Yong-ho clearly mentioned that it was the right time for the talks. Instead, it expressed its complaints to the United States and South Korea. So it's but they are still they don't want to walk away from the negotiations.
Alongside the North Korea denuclearization, there's also the issue about declaring the end of the Korean War. And there was hope that progress would be made on this front as well. Now, North Korea didn't sit down with the US or South Korea, but South Korea did sit down with China and the US. And they're expected that they talked about this issue about declaring the end of the war. Do you think they made progress there?
Yeah, I think so, but it's not clear how much progress they made. But in the ASEAN Regional Forum, the Kang Kyung-hwa, the Foreign Minister of South Korea, had a bilateral meeting with the United States and China respectively, and they exchanged their opinions about the declaration to end the war and the peace through the regime building process. And although a formal meeting was not taken place between the two Koreas, the Kang Kyung-hwa and the Ri Yong-ho, there's an encountered, or that they got the meeting, or just an informal meeting at the dinner, and it was known that they exchanged the candid opinions on various situations, and they got a chance to understand the other side. So regarding the declaration of ending the Korean War, so still we have some way to go before we reach an agreement. But we are still in the process, and as you know, the North Korea and the U.S. got totally different opinions about how they see the declaration to end the Korean War. And for the United States, U.S. argues that the declaration could be possible only after North Korea takes the visible measures directly related to the denuclearization. In contrast, North Korea argues that North Korea has already taken the several measures for the denuclearizing itself, so it's time that U.S. move forward to provide the declaration. So the other big gap between the two countries, and in the middle, South Korea working hard to facilitate and narrow down the gap. So but again, so the U.S. and North Korea, they don't want to go away from the negotiations. Just they are just still in the beginning of the negotiations. So we need to give a little more time for them. Yeah.
You say you give more time, but South Korea's foreign minister raised expectations in her press conference afterwards, saying that she hoped that it would still be possible to reach a declaration to end the war by the end of the year. And then she also mentioned that the UN General Assembly in September would be an important opportunity. What do you think she means by this? Well,
what I meant by the allowing them to have more time was that, so think about what happened in the past. So we got the first historic meeting between the United States and North Korea probably 2 months ago from now. But before the summit, all things the passed so fast, and so for the past several months, so many things happened. So we may expect that the further the measures would follow the same speed, but so we are going into the details. So unlike having the kind of political, symbolic declaration between the top leaders, we are going into the details. So details, usually come with the very different opinions and the tough opinion changes and other things. So we have to a little bit take more time before they move forward and forward. But you mentioned about the possibility of having the second the summit meeting between President Trump and Chairman Kim in September, probably at the United Nations the General Assembly meeting in New York. But for President Trump to invite the Chairman Kim, there would be the visible measures or the performances or the outcomes that the President Trump could rely on. So that's what the U.S. is urging North Korea to move forward, like the sub-meeting, the declaration list that showing all of its the nuclear capabilities and the facilities. Without such visible measures, it would be very hard for President Trump to invite Chairman Kim. So, you mentioned that the Kang Kyung-hwa showed the possibility of having inviting the Chairman Kim in September in New York. It means that possibly, just my opinion, in terms of the South Korea's facilitating role, U.S. and North Korea possibly are narrowing down the opinion, the gaps about the declaration to end the war. If they could narrow down the opinion gaps and they could reach an agreement before the end of this month, then we could see the better opportunities that we can see the Chairman Kim in New York next month.
So Kim-Trump second summit could be on the cards, but unlikely for now unless North Korea makes new steps. Right before we go, quickly, so I also want to talk about the UN report that came out over the weekend that said North Korea is continuing its nuclear and missile program and even selling weapons to places like Syria and Libya and other places. And are you surprised at all by this kind of report that North Korea is still, producing nuclear weapons? And what consequences do you think there will be to this report?
Yes, and it's another good news for whatever reason to hear that the North Korea is still doing some North Korea is violating the UN sanctions like that. But but again the North Korea and the United States they don't want to walk away from the negotiations. So this report could push the North Korea to move back to the right track in terms of the abiding by the UN sanctions, and it also push hard China and Russia not to provide North Korea with kind of the oil and other things that could violate the UN sanctions. So U.S. wanted the speed up the denuclearization process now. So the U.S. knows that the lifting sanctions is one of the important things and one of the things that North Korea really want to get. So the U.S. In terms of that leverage, the pushing North Korea and China and Russia for the denuclearization process. But again, I want to emphasize that although United States is putting more sanctions on North Korea and other countries involved, but still United States still got a hope that they are moving in the right direction in terms of the denuclearizing the North Korea and establishing peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. So I don't think that such report that could make the serious there's a negative impact on the negotiation process.
We're out of time, but Professor, thank you for coming in today and sharing us with your insights.
Thank you for having me.